Okay, here's a site we're looking at called Mohinjo Daro. It shows a few things that are quite conspicuous and very interesting. And it's taken from a short here, as you can see, where they make it to where it looks like somebody turned the phone the wrong way and took the camera, which I don't know why people do that instead of show it the other way, because I don't know if anybody listening has a TV turned on its side or not, but that's not the way that it goes. But irregardless, let's listen real quick to what they have found in Mohenjo Daro and connections, and they're going to act ambiguous. This is a site who's one of those ones where they go, ooh, weird, I don't know. Maybe you could think of aliens or who knows what. In fact, the title is, How Did They Get Nuclear Weapons in Ancient India? Let's listen.
During the excavation of ancient settlements in India, human and animal remains were found, but their numbers were many times smaller than historians believed. At the same time, the location of the skeletons indicated that death took them by surprise. At the initial stage of the work, this mystery baffled researchers.
So here we can see Mohenjo Daro and how it's laid out, and it's all been squared off and so on, and people have made measurements across these things and seen sacred geometry and the way things are made, which are very similar to other people. But those other people that they seem to be very similar to are people from up northwest of where they are there, up and above in Iraq, and in a northern area that Herodotus and a lot of people called the Scythians and so on. These were a people that actually domesticated camels, which came to India way before they ever end up in Egypt, although it seems to be in Egypt iconography now. But also they came in with horses and other advanced things to a point that even today people try to look at this like they look at Egypt or a lot of other places as being some spaceman must have showed up, when the reality of which is something that is quite telling, but nobody wants to really get to it. They'd rather let it be was it aliens, rather than go, oh, look what this shows in all of its truths.
Later, everything fell into place. Archaeologists found traces of a colossal fire at Mohenjo-Daro. The temperature was such that, in some places, the sand was sandwiched into greenish glass.
Now, what he's saying here is that they found glass being created, and this wasn't somebody making glass like they have faience and stuff, and this big place in Israel where they poured a whole bunch of glass one time and all of that stuff. No. This is something that's kind of close to there, like in the Libyan desert where they have that crystal glass that's there. Only this glass seems to be a little more green, like a beer bottle, like quite often is green, rather than a yellowish look that you see in a lot of the Egyptian ones. But that's just due to chemicals when you put it all together, and it kind of shows you how you make colored glass, if you will, in a way. But people look at this moment, and just like it says here, how did they get an atomic bomb? Because the strange thing here is their effect that's right over the ground that's here looks identical pretty much to the ancient testing ground that's in a desert that's in America. It ended up making a giant glass area that looks pretty much like this one. Now what screws this up a little bit too, for the idea of like somebody coming in, and their initial thought was that somebody must have came in and killed them off or whatever and then left the city or something like that. In actuality, what this shows is that something happened here real dramatic and ended this city. And when it did, there was a dramatic fire that was so hot that it created glass. Whenever people could not really do this in any way that it looks like here, for the whole center of the city has this glass across it, and out on the outskirts, not so much. And when people go attacking people in ancient days, I don't know if you've ever looked at any archaeology on it, but it all shows where they attacked, concentration points, they came through, they did all this. There's none of that here. Literally looks almost like Pompeii or something where the people were almost caught off guard in this situation. But then there's another thing that shows that some people might have figured it out because there is a lack of bodies that are there. Now, whether you want to believe that some of those outskirt people that were there got badly burned and somehow made it away from there and things like that, but if it was that bad, they wouldn't have been able to get too far. They haven't seen too much, but just like in the distance in this picture, you see that hill there and it goes over. Wonder if any people went that way. In fact, if there's close water to this right there, or what was close water at this time, because this event looks like it turned off a river that was right near there, and it no longer flowed at that point. And people, when they first digging this, they look through it and they find chariots and horse burials and things like that, and soma drinks and all kinds of stuff. But they hadn't dug down and got to the level of like, oh, here's why they all went away and what happened. And in old stuff, they always tell you about, well, that river went away and then they moved. Well, now we know that what happened to perhaps make that river go away and what happened to perhaps make these people move. And a lot of these people didn't move, did they? They weren't able to make it out. But it's vastly different looking than any other site that's like this, and so it ends up being like Pompeii, where it was caught off guard. It was not attacked by anybody. Let's continue.
Exactly the same effects were observed in the Nevada desert during a nuclear weapons test. When the city is excavated, the outskirts appear almost intact. This, too, would not have happened if the city had been taken in the usual military way. Because when sieges and battles are fought, the outskirts are the first to suffer.
That's like he's saying here, it would be evident, and anybody that's any archaeology like this can tell. I mean, there's been a lot of places, and the Wall of Jericho and all those type things show, but what's not talked about in this idea is that this Mohinjo Daro here was from the ancient Aryans, if you will, for they called them nobility, and Ary means that. But in effect, something happened here like Sodom and Gomorrah, and we showed an ancient thing that happened like this over near the Holy Land that might have led to the tales that went to Sodom and Gomorrah. And in fact, Abu Huyera, well before that, and it's part of the Younger Dryas event and the huge thing that happened, which of course might have also led to some other things that go on there. But this happening here seems to be attached to the ancient Hindu or Indian tales where these guys had weapons that did this, that, and the other, and all these things. It's a magical type thing that happens. But whenever you have a super advanced people over a different people that aren't as advanced, of course, magic's always then invoked. And then in this time right here, magic was embraced and believed in. And if I can do some sleight of hand in front of you and do this, that, and the other, who knows what you might believe that I know or have access to as far as power, things along that line. I think it's kind of amazing that we see sites like this and we get to a certain point and then people seem to be real ambiguous about it. Whenever it's been well known for a long time that even Indra in the Mahabharata is described as a blonde-haired man quite a few times. But also just the language that they even speak today, Sanskrit, is attached to Proto-Indo-Europeans. And it's actually closer to Irish and Old Gaelic and stuff than it would be towards anything that you would think of, and surely the people past them and the islanders is radically different and not connected. And shows there was a connection there. Genetics has also confirmed all of these things, and so we have a point where, due to feelings, we feel like we have to be ambiguous, and then we can't take it to the next level for some reason because feelings, I guess. Isn't that crazy? What's crazier than that it looks like, these people were just a bullseye in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or one might be able to discern that these people were master alchemists and in some way they created something that created this damage that's here. But we can't figure out what that would be that would not make a super concentration in the place that it happened at. Like even modern day, if they had 20 tons of TNT, boom, we could easily tell where that exactly was. Whereas this seems to be a swath over the whole downtown area, pretty much, but not totally, in making a pile of glass. It's bigger than this picture that's shown here. So it's a lot like the Libyan desert glass, and perhaps what we're looking at is another one of those snowballs in hell that they try to tell you all my life that, oh no, the earth never gets hit, nothing ever happens, da 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 da. And maybe that is to appease the public. But the sad thing is reality, sometimes things do happen. And we could guard against this. Imagine if we had something that was like the Patriot systems that were around major cities, and if something came in, it would just detect it and shoot it. Of course, this could go wrong and all kinds of things could happen, but then again, you could perfect it out to the point that it might protect humanity. Hey, here's another idea. You could put something up in space and it would never even happen. In fact, what would have been a city destroyer ends up being a little fireworks display of little meteorites coming through. And isn't that cute compared to what actually was going to happen? But we don't seem to be geared towards that. In fact, I have this fear that if something like that does happen in the future, a lot of people are going to try to turn around and blame God or something on it, as opposed to the fact that we aren't on top of this stuff of asteroids coming in. They've been flying all over our shoulders here the past few years, and they're actually catching them after the fact, saying, that would have been a bad one if it hit us. It's happening all the time. Perhaps we should pay a little bit more attention to it than we currently give credit for. But this is the inspiration. Whenever the man that was attached to the atomic bomb, Oppenheimer, whenever he was asked how did he feel after the atomic bomb went off and showed its power to him and everything, and how did he feel about it, and he said, he quotes from the Mahabharata itself, he says, "Now I have become death, destroyer of worlds." And here's a connection over time. A lot of people have said that there's nuclear things that had happened before, and there's this thing down on the ground that they found that it went off by itself like a nuclear reactor that kept going somehow in ancient times. It got kicked off. There's a lot of weird things about this. I remember years ago whenever I went over this and somebody said, well, they took that thing and they stole it, what was going to be in the Ark of the Covenant, because that ended up doing something like super radiation. Anybody got near it. And so they ended up putting it over here, but they did something to it and it blew up. And when it blew up, it caused this effect. And the only problem with that idea is this really looks like something that happened a couple of 100 foot above it, directed down towards it, just kind of like a dragon coming over and scorching a city. We have something that looks like a nuclear burst that comes from a meteor that came in through our atmosphere, and it got so hot that it started having a lot of immolation on itself, catching on fire, and then exploding into a giant fireball just above the town here. And just like the one at the Younger Dryas Boundary event at Abu Huyera, or the other one that I showed last year where it's a connective towards the Younger Dryas event, or the fact that I showed you one that's in North America that shows that part of those Clovis people were taken out directly, not even have to believe in this little idea of a flood that took them out and they're no longer here, because we know they're no longer here, so where'd they go? But part of them got taken out directly by one of these attacks. How common is it? A million times X stronger than they give credit for, because they try to get you to believe zero. Also, if you look at these things and stuff that happened in the last boundary and everything, all that climate change thing starts to take a secondary suit to the actual reality of things that happen. But let's not go there with this video. I thought I'd get out of here in about 10 minutes, and we're hitting on 12 shortly. So let's just say that's it for this one here, guys. But what do you think downstairs? Peace. Visit the channel.